would like to welcome and introduce some of our staff that will be helping facilitate this meeting this evening. So first, I would like to start off with my boss, Karen.
Thanks, Adri. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Buckley, and I'm branch chief in the Office of Community Air Protection. And my team is all the people that are working behind the scenes to help this presentation go. And we all work on the program together. These would be the liaisons that you would work with in the various communities with the air districts. And since I've introduced myself, I'm going to turn this over to our director, Deldy Reyes, for a few opening remarks. Deldy.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, team. And thank you, members of the public, air district, community-based organizations, and everyone else who's here tonight. We all very much appreciate your participation in this discussion. The AB 617 law required the Air Resources Board to establish the Office of Community Air Protection, to establish a statewide blueprint or policy for how we would implement the law. And it was all to address environmental injustice. And so part of what we're trying to do tonight is help set the stage for how we move the program forward while continuing to meet the requirement in the law that we annually consider communities. This means that we have a lot of hard choices to make because, as I believe we all know, the funding for this program has really stayed flat since the beginning. And so I just wanted to just share that with you all. Thank you again for your patience and your participation. This program is really just one tool in the toolbox to address disproportionate air quality, and we in OCAP and other divisions in CARB who implement this law, understand that and want to be able to use other approaches as well. So at this point, I'll turn it back to the team for moving us through the slides.
Thank you, Deldy. So like Karen said, we have some other CARB staff behind the scenes and our interpreters, of course. So thank you all for the support this evening. And now let's talk about today's objectives. We will be providing an overview of the Community Air Protection Program, as well as a snapshot of where the AB 617 communities are in their plan development or implementation. Then talk about the community recommendation and selection process. After that, we will share the staff's draft recommendations for 2021 communities. Then we will open it up for discussion to hear any comments or questions from you. We look forward to answering any questions you may have on the 2021 recommendation and selection process. So as part of a kickoff to the process, in August, we released a virtual meeting recording to describe this year's process. So today I will be giving a high-level summary of this history of AB 617. If you would like more detail, you may always refer back to the recording posted on our community selection page. In 2017, we see that this legislation was authored by Assemblyperson Cristina Garcia and signed into law. The purpose of AB 617 is to work toward environmental justice by focusing attention on communities that are disproportionately impacted by poor air quality. So CARB also established the Community Air Protection Program to focus on these communities that year. And in 2018, the Office of Community Air Protection developed the program blueprint as a guidance document for the program. The board also selected the first 10 communities for developing a community air monitoring plan, a community emission reduction program, or both. The board noted that we would learn from these communities to lift up strategies that can be applied in other places. AB 617 also required new reporting requirements for criteria and toxics, air pollutants, and the expedited implementation of best available retrofit control technology, among other provisions. AB 617 statute requires the board to consider new communities every year, and the process we follow is outlined in Appendix B of the blueprint. Laura will talk more about this later in our presentation. So what does AB 617 focus on? So when we talk about cumulative exposure, what we are talking about is, for example, this figure shows what it could mean: the exposure of more than a single air pollutant and more than one source. For example, here we see how homes surrounded by polluting stationary and mobile sources. Oftentimes, communities that suffer from more than one source of air pollution also deal with pollution from other media, such as water or waste, and land use decisions play a big role in creating conditions of commutative exposure. So some of these AB 617 strategies are like the foundation of the program is partnering and collaboration. The strategy is essential as AB 617 doesn't give either CARB or air districts new legal tools or incentives to compel others to come to the table. And this is why trust and relationship are so important. CARB staff understood the intent of AB 617 to prioritize community concerns. This is why the blueprint calls for centering community voices in the process. AB 617 calls on both CARB and air districts to use our existing authorities, including enforcement and rulemaking authorities. We do this both for the communities already in the program and for the hundreds more that are eligible. Building community capacity to engage in air quality decision-making is also key to our work. The Community Air Grants Program is one tool as we are training and increasing accessibility of information. So this slide shows a current snapshot of communities in the program. Communities are either developing or implementing plans. Here we see the first bar, how the communities are currently in plan development. So these are 2020 communities. Then we see the first year of implementation, which are 2019 communities, and the 2018 communities are completing their second year of implementation. All communities are working on air monitoring plan, the community emission reduction program, or in both, but not every community does both. For example, the West Oakland community was selected to work on an emission reduction program only. South Sacramento Flooring communities was selected to develop and implement an air monitoring plan only. So let's talk a little bit about communities already selected. The communities in the program are identified on this map. As you can see, these are the little orange dots on the map. These show the locations. And these communities are all highly burdened and present a diverse mix of urban and rural communities. They vary in geographic size, population density, and air pollution concerns. At the heart of the effort is the input from community members through community steering committees, or CSCs, as we would like to refer to them, to help inform the actions developed and set the priorities in these plans. One of the goals of this program is to take the knowledge learned from developing and implementing these initial plans as model communities to expand the lessons learned or strategies developed to other burdened communities not selected. On the left side here, we wanted to give an example of how different some communities are even within the same air district. So the communities I am profiling here are both located in the South Coast Air Quality Management District, and yet they vary in size. For example, Southeast Los Angeles being 3 times as densely populated than Eastern Coachella Valley, and they vary by sources. Some examples for Southeast Los Angeles include truck traffic and rail yards, and for Eastern Coachella Valley, their concerns are more of, or include fugitive road dust and pesticides. So currently CARB staff is evaluating what we've learned from working with these diverse communities so as to expand the program to benefit all impacted communities. Now I would like to turn over the next portion of the presentation on the community recommendations process to my colleague, Laura.
Thank you, Adri. Good evening. My name is Laura Zrumba-Schmidt, and I am a staff air pollution specialist in the Office of Community Air Protection. Thank you for joining us this evening. And as Adri had mentioned, I'm going to continue the discussion on the draft recommendations for 2021. Before I do, I want to recognize that during our board meeting in February of this year, we heard the concern of the competitive nature of the way communities are selected. Our board directed staff to find other options. So let me talk about the selection process for this year, and then we can talk about plans moving forward. As you've heard, the law requires us to consider community selection every year. So what is the annual community consideration and recommendation process? By statute, the CARB board must consider the selection of new communities every year for either a community emission reduction program, community air monitoring, or both. Community nominations are received by CARB through self-nominations or Air District nominations. Self-nominations can be submitted at any time and can be emailed to our program email. We post the list of communities nominations on our website. The website lists all the communities that have been nominated since the program began. The list is over 120 communities and is updated annually as new communities are submitted. As in prior years, we encourage communities to work with their local air districts to develop recommendations. This year, CARB requested the air districts to provide their submittals by the end of October. This is in preparation for our board meeting, which will be held in February 2022. This slide shows the considerations for community recommendations since the program began. There are two symbols on the table. The X means this factor was considered, and the star means that this is what the board directed us in that year. In 2018, CARB staff proposed a diverse set of communities based on factors listed in statute and the blueprint. CARB assessed a variety of data sources to quantitatively describe the cumulative air burdens of the communities on the list. Examples of data sources used include Cal Virus Screen, emissions information for all sources, which includes modeling, and Healthy Places Index. This information complements a more detailed local community specific assessment that is part of the community recommendation process. The goal was to get communities that have very different sources and were also regionally diverse in an effort to use information for other burdened communities. In 2019, we built on the prior year's considerations for diverse communities. We also considered the board direction, which was to prioritize communities selected for monitoring only for community emission reduction programs, if supported by data and the Community Steering Committee. In 2020, in response to the 2019 board direction, staff developed a list of communities strongly supported. This list of communities strongly supported was released to recognize the communities that have strong support by the community and the air district, but had not been selected. This year, in 2021, the board directed staff to consider alternative options from the selection process to benefit communities not selected and minimize the negative impact of making communities compete with each other. Next year, we will begin outreach on initial concepts for expanding the program to benefit communities in ways that do not rely on community selection. We plan to hold focus groups to make sure the public, community, and stakeholders have an opportunity to develop the expansion concepts. Our goal is to reduce air emissions and air pollution exposure in the most impacted communities. Now, what was considered for 2021? As you can see from the box on this slide, all the prior considerations, and in addition, we still must consider the state budget. The level of funding has not changed, even though more communities are added. This means air districts must work with their existing allocation of funds for all selected communities in their jurisdiction. As in prior years, we also consider the continued financial support needed for the selected communities while recognizing the need to support the existing plans with resources. CARB staff is proposing to recommend 2 new communities and a 3rd with reservations. This map shows the areas that are defined as disadvantaged communities. We also have overlaid the candidate communities, which are the communities that are either recommended by the public or the air district. Also included are the self-nominations, which we admit, as I mentioned, was about 120 unique communities. These nominations tend to be consistent with past nominations. Now I'd like to go through the 2021 Air District and Community nominations we received. This year, CARB received 4 total nominations, 1 from a community-based organization and 3 from the air districts and community organizations together. The nominations from the Air District are the Bay Area Air Quality Management District recommended East Oakland for a community emission reduction plan only. The Bay Area describes their partnership with the East Oakland community in their nomination. The Air District has been building capacity with East Oakland neighborhoods and has been partnering with organizations. The Air District receives support from Communities for a Better Environment, and East Oakland Collective, as well as new voices are rising. The Imperial Air Pollution Control District with Comité Cívico del Valle recommended the northern end of Imperial County for both community air monitoring and community emission reduction plans. The Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District nominated 3 communities for air monitoring plans. These communities are North Sacramento, Oak Park, Fruit Ridge, and Meadowview. The San Diego Air Pollution Control District recommended the San Diego International Border Community, which includes San Ysidro and Otay Mesa. San Diego recommended the community for both community air monitoring and community emission reduction plans. The Air District has deployed black carbon analyzers in their community to support their recommendation. We also received a nomination from Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability for the Lavinia community in Madera County. As we have done in the past, any community nominations we receive, we provide to the appropriate air district for their consideration in their submittal to CARB. And this year we did not receive community nominations from San Joaquin Valley or South Coast. This slide shows the maps for the communities that we're recommending. Intentionally, there are no boundaries identified. This is to emphasize that anything that may look like a boundary is for preliminary evaluation only. These boundaries are consistent with the preliminary boundaries that the Air District has provided to us. And they will be refined if selected by the community steering committee that's formed. I want to provide just a little bit of background on each of these communities. The East Oakland community is about 20 square miles in size with a population density of 12,000 people. This community has a number of stationary sources in industrial facilities and mobile sources in freeways, rail, and freight activities. The northern end of Imperial County community, which is the community we are recommending with reservations, the Imperial County nomination currently covers an estimated 600 square miles of area, which doesn't include the Salton Sea, and it has a population density of 120. This is almost 30 times the size of the East Oakland community, and it includes about 10 distinct communities, such as Brawley, Salton City, City of Imperial. We will be working with the Air District to refine this nomination. The third community we are recommending is the San Diego International Border Community. This community is about 24 square miles with a population density of 3,000. This community is home to 2 ports of entry, San Ysidro and Otay Mesa. The majority of the air pollution concerns in this community are associated with the ports of entry, truck traffic, and freeways. Now I'd like to go over the other work going on in the program. So on a parallel effort, the blueprint for this program is currently being revised. As we do so, we will include recommended changes to lift up strategies to expand the program. This slide shows the timeline for the revision process currently underway. Currently, we expect that the board will consider the blueprint in the fall-winter timeframe of 2022. So what are the next steps? We plan to take your comments today and finalize our staff report to target a release time of early January 2022. The staff report will include a preliminary community profile and the recommended communities. Then we will bring our staff recommendations to our board at the February 10th board meeting for consideration. In March 2022, we plan to begin our outreach effort on our expansion concepts. And in the spring 2022, we will plan to release a draft outline of the 2022 Community Air Protection Program Blueprint. So before we open it up to questions, I just want to remind people how they can submit questions, either by raising their hand in the Zoom platform, and then those questioners will be, or commenters will be queued. And then we will also check the Spanish phone line to see if there's any questions on the phone line as well. So at this point, I'm going to ask Brian's help to help me open up the meeting for discussion.
Oh, was I just talking to myself, everyone? I was, wasn't I? It's been one of those days. Okay, so I'm going to, we already have a lot of hands raised, which is awesome. So the first one I saw pop up was Suma with backlit, if she would like to ask her questions, and then I'll kind of go down my list. And please, any other CARB staff, if I miss anyone, let me know. So Suma, go ahead.
I was actually going to offer some comment on the East Oakland recommendation. Is this the appropriate time to do so?
Yes, go right ahead.
For sure.
Okay. Well, then, good evening, everyone. My name is Suma Pisapati, and I'm the Environmental Justice and Community Engagement Officer at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. Part of my position involves the oversight of AB 617, and the implementation of that program for the Bay Area Air District. So at the Air District, we work to ensure that public health, racial equity, and environmental justice are a core practice of all of our work. We believe that everyone, regardless of socioeconomic status, race, or neighborhood, should have the ability to breathe clean air and lead a healthy life. I'm here today to express my support for the East Oakland nomination. So East Oakland is a working class African American and Latinx community facing disparate pollution burdens. At the same time, East Oaklanders experience higher rates of cancer, chronic lower respiratory disease mortality, and lower life expectancies, particularly for African Americans as compared to their white and affluent counterparts who live in adjacent areas of Oakland. Classifying East Oakland as an AB 617 SERP community will provide critical resources and a process to co-develop an action plan with residents who have been historically harmed by redlining practices and public policy decisions that have facilitated the environmental and health inequities that we see today. The Bay Area Air District has been working alongside our East Oakland community partners, including Communities for a Better Environment and New Voices Are Rising, on the East Oakland nomination process, which was recently approved by our board of directors. This community proves to be in an excellent position to accept a nomination because of its established community capacity in air quality planning and leadership, as well as successful coalition building across East Oakland neighborhoods. I want to thank all of the community members who have advocated for East Oakland and for their willingness to engage and partner with the Air District in this process. Thank you for your time and for considering a SERP for East Oakland. Thank you.
Thank you, Suma. We appreciate your comments. And I think you're right. I think it is a well-deserved community like many of our communities. So I am glad that we do have an opportunity here.
So next on the list, I have Naimi Martinez. You can go ahead and unmic. Naimeen, can you hear me? All right, Naimeen, sorry to interrupt. I think you might not have selected a language, so we can't hear you. I'm not sure if that was going on.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I am in the English channel and I can hear Naomi good. So I think it might be a
I had
technical
just selected
difficulty.
English, so maybe that was a problem.
Naimeen, can you choose English?
I just chose English.
I hear Naimeen in English, but I also have unmute original off.
I'm in original audio and I hear Naimi just fine.
Why did you start over, Naimeen?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry. Good afternoon, buenas tardes. I am Nayamin Martinez with the Central California Environmental Justice Network. And although I am part of the South Central Fresno Steering Committee, here right now, I'm here to raise and support the recommendation made, although our East District in the area did not submit official recommendations. I am in support of the recommendation made by Leadership Council for the Community of Lavinia, where we have also worked and where we have seen the readiness and the eagerness of residents to be part of this project. And I think that it should be considered at a later moment, even though the San Joaquin Valley did not, the Air District did not submit any recommendations. Also, I would like to echo that there are other communities where we have been working through air grants in the past 3 years, including South Modesto, that are more than ready to be part of the AB 617 process. And again, although not a formal nomination was made, I just want to put in the radar South Modesto as a community that has all the air pollution problems, but at the same time, capacity and readiness and engagement from leaders and residents to make this a successful process if they are selected at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nayamin. And I think that Leadership Council has been really good about always putting Lavinia forth as a community. And we do have, all your work and all the information that you've provided to support that community. We still are trying to work with the Air District to see how we can help the community, even though it's not, being selected as a specific community for the program. But they are on our radar, and we really appreciate how Leadership Council continues to support the community. So thank you.
All right, and actually next on my list, I have Leticia from Leadership Council. Feel free to unmute.
This for this community 617.
So as you know, with selecting communities over the years, it requires a lot of resources at the district level. And one of the things we have seen this year is districts kind of reaching capacity at what they can do with the resources they have. So I think that in not receiving any recommendations from either San Joaquin Valley or South Coast, kind of is telling, that they are at capacity for what they can handle resource-wise. So that is why we are trying to see if there's other means that we can try and figure out as reaching and being able to help Lavinia outside of the 617 program. So this is still something we're trying to work through, and we want to work with the Air District, and we're going to be discussing with the Air District, but we don't have anything concrete at this time. But yeah, pretty much I think the districts are kind of reaching their capacity point for the communities that they already are working with. And I don't know if Karen or Del, do you want to add to that?
I would just say that, we look forward to working with the Leadership Council, with the community members, the district, and then trying to bring in the other partners for the issues that you guys have identified in your letter. And we hope to work with you all very soon. Deldy, anything else that you would like to add? Okay, thanks.
Awesome. And then my second question is, if I remember correctly, you are all going to release the nominations 2022, was it February? Okay.
So we are going to be releasing our staff report in early January, and kind of based on the information that we get here, we'll add to our staff reports, and we're going to go to our board in February of 2022, correct?
And the staff report will include what we're going to
Yes.
put forward to the board.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you for answering my questions. So I guess I'll just move on to my comment. So as many of you know, La Viña residents have self-nominated for this program 3 years in a row. This is a direct result from the intense pesticide application in its community, pesticide land-in, dust events, emissions from heavy-duty trucks and ag equipment, ag burning, and a bunch of other things. In this community, many people have been diagnosed with cancer and passed away, and the vast majority of households are impacted by asthma. Not only that, but many children in the community face development issues that residents fear are linked to the pesticide exposure. And last year, the Air District nominated La Viña, and there's a strong community momentum and resident preparedness and willingness to participate in 617 steering committee. Additionally, CARB staff and board members repeatedly assured La Viña residents that 2021 would be their year to finally benefit from this program. And we hope to work together to get them elected.
Thank you, Letitia. And I'm really glad that Leadership Council continues to, support the La Viña. And I do hope that this is the year, we can make something happen, because I know that the community has a lot to deal with, and it's really challenging. So I appreciate your comment.
Thanks, Leticia. Really quick, I just want to check in make sure we're not getting any questions on the Spanish conference line, and then I'll move on to our next queued comment. Cool. Okay, so next on the list, I have Maria Dominguez.
Hi, good evening, CARB leaders, community members. My name is Maria Dominguez, and I was born and raised in East Oakland, in between the Interstate 580 and Interstate 880 freeways, on a block away from the East 14th corridor, highly trafficked by freight trucks, amongst so many other polluting activities in that area. I currently work for the Health Equity Policy and Planning Team in Alameda County in their Public Health Department, Office of the Director. And my colleagues and I are currently working on COVID response and recovery, while also supporting other health equity issues, including environmental justice. We support nominating East Oakland for the AB 617 Community Emissions Reduction Plan. Our public health department has worked with diverse East Oakland stakeholders, including community-based organizations such as Communities for a Better Environment, and most recently the East Oakland Collective, which is highly supporting our COVID response. To look closer at the racial inequities in life expectancy resulting from adverse environmental impacts in East Oakland neighborhoods. During the pandemic, we've heard East Oakland stakeholders call for more attention to the intersection of COVID-19 and public health as it pertains to emissions and air quality, and how persons with respiratory conditions, including asthma, are disproportionately affected. All the while, we've also been experiencing these adverse climate events, the wildfires. So we continue to be concerned about the added burden of COVID on community public health, and especially in communities of color like East Oakland, where Latino, Latinx, Black, African-American residents are among the most impacted by COVID, on top of already carrying a high cumulative pollution burden. So we thank you for your consideration and look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Next in our queue, we have Jasmine Martinez from CVAC.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jasmine Martinez, coordinator with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, or CVAC. CVAC works to restore clean air to the San Joaquin Valley and support the community air protection program across the region. This program is a long overdue investment in addressing localized air pollution in some of our most impacted neighborhoods: South Kern, Stockton, Shafter, and South Central Fresno. For the upcoming Year 4 process, CVAC supports nominations of South Madera and South Modesto. These communities have expressed that they are ready and willing to be a part of the planning process and welcome the investment to build on their momentum. Rather than back only one, we ask that you consider both equally and note the need for ongoing program expansion and scaling up of immediate protections and long-term investments for clean air and health equity across the region and state. Furthermore, A transparent, accountable, and participatory process is still needed, particularly when it comes to budgeting. The budgets for AB 617 funding that go to CARP and the Valley Air District, as well as the budget associated with the community prioritized emission reduction measures. Community empowerment with the budget starts at CARP, and communities should have the authority to access preliminary information and make suggestions before allocations for air districts are decided. Also, we need more oversight in fund disbursement to districts to ensure transparency, equity, and accountability. For the AB 617 community grants, organizations like ours with small staff teams are asked for in-depth reports on quarterly basis regarding objectives met and funding used. And we are paid on a reimbursement basis while receiving a small fraction of what air districts receive. Agencies should be held to the same standards. There's much more work to be done to ensure transparent and equitable processes are in place overall, such as training on environmental justice principles, cultural competency, and participatory budgeting. Please adopt South Madera and South Modesto as Year 4 communities and continue to work collaboratively with community groups and the Valley Air District on process improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. And thank you for your other program comments. I think there are a lot of people listening from the program, so I think they will take those comments as well.
Next, thank you. We have Alejandro.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, definitely.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Alejandro Amador, and I'm a resident of San Isidro and the Environmental Program Supervisor at Casa Familiar. I am calling in support of the San Diego border communities to be selected and appreciate the nomination for becoming an AB 617 community. Due to the high levels of particulate matter and black carbon that are constantly reported higher in these communities than the rest of the region, San Isidro hosts the biggest land port of entry in the Northern Hemisphere, where 60,000 vehicles cross daily after being queued up for hours before crossing. And the east side of Otay Mesa is a heavily commercial zone that hosts the largest commercial crossing in the California-Mexico border. Additionally, and this is actually part of a question that I wanted to ask you guys, is that Otay Mesa is an extremely rapidly growing community, both in the housing development and the industrial side. So the reason why it doesn't rank higher in Kind screen is that right now the population index is very low, but that in the upcoming years is going to change real quickly. So is there plans to involve any of the housing data that's being in development right now? I know that probably is pretty hard to calculate, but is there any plans to include that data in the selection as well? I will pause there just to see if there's an answer to that question.
So if the data is not already available or published yet, it probably is not going to get into the evaluation for this year. We pretty much, unless the Air District provides it as data that they are privy to. We do have data that is updated in our table of metrics. We have the new CalEnviro Screen 4.0 as part of that, and other metrics data that it is used as kind of to help develop that profile for the community.
All right, thank you. Then I would just add that I did hear then when you were explaining the nominations that some of the biggest concerns are the freeways and the freight and also the land port of entries. But I would also like to remark that it's not only the land port of entries, but where communities are susceptible to more sources from both countries, especially, there's illicit burning and just regular factory emissions that are emitted on the Mexico side that might not be taken into account on this side, but we still get the emissions here in the community as well.
And that's where we kind of our partner with the air districts, because the air district has, I think, a lot of efforts on the border region where they also face that same concern that you bring up, that there's the emissions on the other side of the border that we don't know about. So they have some partnerships as well that I think that they can help fill in some of those gaps where we don't have information.
Yeah, Alejandro, I put my email in the chat. We do have a group that works on that exact issue with cross-border air pollution. So if you want to email me or any email that you have from CARB, and we can put you in contact with the group, the staff at CARB that are working on those cross-border air pollution issues, because it is a big concern.
All right, thank you. I will write that down. Thank you. That completes my comment.
Thank you, Alejandro.
So next I have in the queue is Adele.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Adele Watts. I am the Solar on Multifamily Affordable Housing Outreach Associate with CBE, Communities for a Better Environment, and I'm also a East Oakland resident. And I'm here in support of East Oakland, nomination for the Community Emissions Reductions Plan. And I would define East Oakland from High Street to the San Leandro border and the waterfront to the hills. East Oakland neighborhoods are in the top 10 percentile of the most impacted neighborhoods in the state. Historical racist planning practices stemming from redlining have allowed for industry to grow very closely to East Oakland's Black, immigrant, and low-income neighborhoods, and where folks live, go to school, play, worship, and work. I also am a parent and concerned with the health of my child and multiple family members and loved ones that live throughout East Oakland. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you for the support for East Oakland's nomination.
Next we have Ernesto.
Hi, good afternoon y buenas tardes. My name is Ernesto Arevalo. I'm from East Oakland. I live just down the street from an AC Transit bus depot and logistics facilities. I've grown up around industrial lands my entire life, and I have asthma, and I am going through it this winter. Even had to take some time off of work just to regain my breathing. And I'm calling to speak in support of the East Oakland nomination today. As NorCal Program Director with Communities for a Better Environment, I know firsthand the organizing of several community members around addressing polluting facilities, as well as truck attracting facilities, truck routes, and freeways. There is a vision and there is a lot of ideas for how to address these polluting sources. So we are ready. It is about how we collaborate with the Air District to move forward these policies and enforcement. One question that I do have for CARB is, since we're talking about geography, East Oakland is always talked about being larger than it is. Sometimes we talk about deep East Oakland, being from High Street to the San Leandro border, from, as mentioned by Adele, from the shoreline to going towards the Oakland Hills. There is the freeway, and that freeway, the 880, extends from San Leandro all the way through to Fruitvale and Chinatown towards West Oakland. And I'm wondering if there's consideration for different types of SERP. So one SERP that will focus specifically on the industrial facilities and truck attracting businesses that are in neighborhoods, and another that focuses specifically on freeways that cross different communities. Considering that West Oakland already did a SERP and this freeway connects our communities, is that something that CARB would consider moving forward? And also, what kind of role would the agency play in leading that type of effort, given, what BACMED's jurisdiction is around industrial facilities, specifically, point source pollution, stationary sources?
So I'll take a stab at that, Ernesto. And first, just want to thank you again for showing up tonight and being part of our conversation and your support for the East Oakland nomination. One of the pluses of this program is that communities can drive, and in fact should, drive the priorities to inform the emissions reduction plan. what we have seen so far is that a lot of the SERPs have a range of strategies. And there's nothing to say that you could not also have sub parts of a SERP or mini SERPs or geographically focused plans, as long as it meets the requirements that we set out in the blueprint that we then report to our board about, then, you know, it should work, right? But again, you know, what we have seen work is taking the time with different community voices and with the Air District to come up with your priorities. And the second part of your question is really about CARB. And I just want to say again that CARB is a player, is a partner. We also bring to the table regulatory authority in terms of rulemaking, but also in terms of enforcement. And yes, while it is true that air districts have primary authority over stationary sources and CARB has primary authority over mobile sources, for example, in mobile sources, we often work with air districts to co-implement mobile source regulations. And in terms of stationary sources, CARB does have an oversight role as well. So we are at the table, and we also commit to developing enforcement commitments informed by community priorities that become part of the SERP as well. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for answering my question. That helps.
Great. So Kevin, before I hand it over to you, I just wanted to check with Jill Ratner to make sure she meant to put her hand down because I had her written down next in the queue.
Thanks. Yes, I did.
Okay, great, great. Kevin, go ahead.
Hi, Kevin Hamilton, Co-Director, Central California Asthma Collaborative. CCAC, first of all, would like to support our partner nominations in San Diego, in Imperial County and East Oakland, and thank CARB for making those selections in the latest AB 617 lottery draw. We really feel strongly that there's room for all of California's disadvantaged communities in AB 617, and that room needs to be carved out. We certainly want to make sure that our communities of South Modesto and South Madera, including Lavina, as well as Eastern Tulare County, are included. The first two communities I mentioned there are definitely organized and ready to go here. So while the investment in mitigating sources would be required, the organizing on the ground has already been done through existing work with partners who've already spoken and others who have yet to speak. What that leads me to my second comment, which is to express my support for CARB's commitment to working to undo sort of this mess that's been created by what is essentially become, at least from the perspective of the community, a lottery in choosing winners and losers. There's 120 communities that have put themselves forward, that have taken the time and energy to put themselves forward. I certainly don't leave the governor and his budgeting ability out of this. Obviously, when we see a line item come out of state government that's the same every year for a project that obviously needs to be invested on and expanded, we find that very disappointing. And it's a call to action, I would like to think, for all of the community partners on this call and those who aren't, for the advocacy that's required for the budget coming into next year. We're given to understand that the surplus next year will be as high as $31 billion. And it is quite honestly insanity that we would not be able to contribute at least 25% of that to the AB 617 program moving forward, which would allow us to potentially address the majority of these communities that are and provide these assets to them. So hopefully somebody carries that message on to them from the agencies as well, and from our colleagues. So, and I'm very glad to hear that CARB's going to start this effort moving forward to figure out how to disentangle this and ensure that these assets, and especially the investments that are required, are provided and available for all the communities who want to step forward and take advantage of them. So I'm really glad to hear about that project, and we look forward to participating in that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for all your advocacy, because I think I always hear you in all the meetings, and I appreciate that you're continually involved and engaged. So I think you will be a very important part of us moving forward, and at least in our focus groups for the expansion process moving forward.
Thanks. I think that the San Joaquin Valley Environmental Justice Steering Committee, which is really what drives our work here, the 17 organizations in the Valley, is who will be play a critical role here in the Valley. And it's a table of equals, and you know, we all stand behind the nominations for the Valley and are disappointed that those aren't happening, but thank you.
Evan. So next we have Thomas Helm.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Tom Helm. I'm the co-founder of Valley Improvement Projects, a Stanislaus County-based social and environmental justice organization. And I want to echo some of the comments from my colleagues from Nayamin at Central California Environmental Justice Network, and Jasmine at Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, and the comments you just heard from Kevin from the Central California Asthma Collaborative. I want to also say that, you know, I want to support every one of these communities to get the resources and the attention that they deserve from partners that we have working in Imperial Valley and the border community to East Oakland, and also in the San Joaquin Valley, from La Vina to South Madera, and also the community that I work in South Modesto. We've done a lot of work with our partners over the years. I think we nominated South Modesto in the very beginning of the AB 617 process. But as we worked with our partners, we kind of, you know, would know which were the strongest communities that were most likely to be selected, and we stay in solidarity with each other and stand behind the communities that we've selected in the past. So I plan on nominating South Modesto again to look at the many census tracts in that area that are in the 90th percentile of Cal EnviroScreen, especially for diesel particulate matter. Like I said, we're more of a county-wide organization, so a lot of the work we've done has been county-wide. We have a network of particulate matter PM 2.5 monitors throughout the whole county, but also included in South Modesto. We worked with our partners to have black carbon monitors put in South Modesto, but also throughout the whole county. And unfortunately, we do feel like we are leaving behind parts of the valley and also parts of our own county where we've worked in the more rural area of West Stanislaus County that has a trash incinerator and a major freeway 5, as well as a growing number of warehouses, agricultural dust and pesticides and many other sources. And we've worked there just as much, if not even longer than the South Modesto area. But we're kind of forced to pick a community that we feel will get chosen. But I just wanted to mention that and all the work that's gone on in these other communities as well. And it's really kind of a, you know, as much as we use Cal EnviroScreen, it is an issue where you have these census tracts with a really large rural area that kind of will skew the score a little bit compared to the smaller rural towns that are near some of the pollution. They don't maybe get the score that really reflects the emissions that they're near. So I just wanted to mention that, and looking forward to seeing through this process. And thank you for your time, allowing me to express the support for not only South Modesto, but like I said, all the other communities that are in need of these resources. And have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thanks, Thomas. And I do want to emphasize, we agree with you that Cal EnviroScreen is a great tool, but it was a tool built for a specific purpose. So we do try to incorporate a lot of other data and factors when we're selecting. And you know, it's a model, right? And models approximate reality. They aren't reality. So thank you for that comment. And yeah, we agree. Yeah. Cool. Moving on, we have Jessica Tovar.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Guadalupe Tovar and I'm with the New Voices Rising program manager. And well, I speak on behalf of many of our member youth who actually live in East Oakland. And obviously we are in overwhelming support of being recognized under AB 617. The need to address historical harms and lack of resources on air quality in East Oakland is long overdue. Such investments can help reduce pollution, restore justice, and bring dignified economic opportunities to the East Oakland area. And one thing I just want to highlight that has come very deeply from the youth is that this will require community engagement and community-based implementation to ensure that the pollution reduction is done in a way that works for the community. So I definitely want to highlight that on behalf of the youth. And I do want to acknowledge the other community leaders that have spoken today, because we do have an environmental justice and health crisis throughout the state of California. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica. And it's always refreshing to see your youth, you know, at our board meetings, you know, sharing and also supporting East Oakland. So yeah, we look forward to working with them.
So next I have Adrian Wren from Valley Vision.
Thanks, Brian. Hi there, Adrian Wren with Valley Vision. We're one of the CARB Community Air grantees in, actually the only one in the Sacramento region to date. And we've been working in the North Sacramento and the Oak Park project area. I know I saw them in the presentation as, you know, having been elevated by our local air district, and just wanted to learn a little bit more about why they weren't selected to move forward, particularly the North Sacramento and Oak Park areas were not selected to move forward this year.
So one of the things that the Sacramento Air District has always included in their nomination is the need for additional funds in order to extend their work in AB 617. And because there's no additional implementation funds, and as we've mentioned in our presentation, the funding has been pretty stagnant over the years, they can't take on another community. So we haven't moved them forward because we don't have a means to give them more money for this community.
I don't know, Adrian, I don't know if you had a follow-up to that response. Just want to give you a chance in case.
No, thank you for answering the question. I appreciate the clarity.
Cool. No problem, no problem. I'm looking on my list. I don't see more hands raised. So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand or unmute, or you can also use the chat. And in the interim, I guess I can check with Sol one more time to see if there are any comments on the Spanish conference phone line. Oh, I see Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
There we go. Okay, now I got it. Okay, so I've got a program that transcends the boundaries within what we're talking about. So we're putting together a design for meeting CARB's mandate about 2009 and earlier engine model year trucks in ports and rail hubs, which would include Stockton and rail hubs, and maybe there's some other ports in the Central Valley. But it's, you know, it definitely works. You know, I have information on Oakland and Los Angeles and Long Beach. I don't have information on the other ports and rail hubs in terms of quantities, but we're looking at 6,000 trucks estimated that, and I don't have data from you guys. I just have an estimate based on rough estimates. about 2,000 trucks, 1,500 trucks that are short haul and another 500 probably long haul that would be needed to be converted to full battery electric from diesel in Port of Oakland, and probably 4,500 short haul and 1,500 long haul, if it's in the same proportions, in Long Beach, Los Angeles. And we're looking at being able to start converting trucks in volume in the first half of next year. And it's basically an effort by a group of companies to come together and make this happen. And if we could get some support, it would help us to move faster and be ready, have more preparedness sooner. But once the thing is at full speed, we should be able to provide convert trucks for half the cost or less of a new electric truck. And later on, when we're at full speed, that cost can actually come down further. And so the question is, can you, maybe under another CARB program, but are you able to sort of fit converting trucks and stuff into the regional S617 programs? Is there a way to fuse these things together so that the energy and the organization and all that is synergistic?
So I think I'm going to need Karen or Deldy's help on answering this one. So
I'll start it out. Deldy can help me out. Mark, I appreciate you bringing this up, and we can certainly discuss it offline. I know that with incentive funding and with various technologies, there has to be certain requirements in order for those things to be funded. But it is certainly worth a discussion. And I know that you have our contact information and it's been in the presentation. You can reach out and send us your information if you'd like, and we can talk about that. And then in the end, it's up to the communities if they want to invest in the conversion of trucks. So there is that. But we do appreciate your comments tonight. And
Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
So are there any other questions by anybody on the call? I don't see anybody else in the queue. Well, it looks like we've answered all the questions there could be on the program.
We seem to have a question coming up in the Spanish line.
Great.
One moment.
Thanks, Liliana. Oh, there it is. I see it. Perfect. All right, if you all can bear with us, we're going to have it. I think it's going to come through in the chat here in a second.
Hey there.
So I think that we can summarize the conversation, the question that's being asked, and then in chat, and I'll post it here in a second.
Great. Oh, we did have another chat question. I don't know if this is the one. I don't think this is the one coming from the Spanish line, but the concept of eligibility for air monitors for air pollution from Dahlia. Oh, that is maybe one of our interpreters. I don't know if I can answer that question, I guess, or go over it. That community air monitoring is part of the community air protection program, and communities can be selected not only for development of an emissions reduction program, but also selection for community air monitoring. So, and I believe, and Laura, maybe you want to correct me, I think all the communities nominated this year were for Both, correct? Not East Oakland. East
Oakland is a
is just
emission reduction
just
program
CERT.
only. Yeah.
Got it. So that is part of the recommendation process is if you're going to do air monitoring or the emissions reduction program or both.
And I would just add that for air monitoring at the community level, the Community Air Grant program under 617 is a really good resource. It is not only for those communities that are selected for emission reduction plans. And our environmental justice program at CARB does a really great job of managing that program. And there are annual appropriations to fund the community air grants.
I also see another question in the chat. Oh, Leticia, to repeat that, that's the Community Air Grants program, and I'm going to have somebody chat a link to it, Leticia, in the chat. So it's Community Air Grants, and it's part of AB 617 funding. And then I see Tim has a question regarding limited funding for this year. The first part of that is why are funds limited? And I guess I see Deli's unmuted, but if she wants to go into this, but it is through a budget, the budget process yearly, annually through the state, and they budget money for incentives and for program implementation and for the community air grant. So every year money is allocated by the legislature, and when the governor signs the budget for the program. So that's where our funds are limited from. Yeah, and the funds are from state funds. And yeah, I guess the legislature will determine what to do with the budget surplus. I don't know, Del, if you want to add any more detail to that description.
No, you did great, Brian. We certainly, as Kevin shared, we certainly hope and are encouraging anyone who will listen that this program needs more funding in order to support more communities. So who knows how that will play out with the budget surplus, but we can tell you that for this most recent budget year, the funding that was allocated for air districts to implement the program stayed flat, even though we all hear tonight that there are more communities that are deserving and that should be selected, but yet the funding amount for air districts and for incentive dollars has stayed the same.
Steldy. So we're at that awkward pause again where I don't see other questions or any questions in the chat, but please feel free if you have a question to raise your hand. We're here all night. So if you have a question for the chat or you'd like to verbally ask your question, feel free to.
You want to put the contact information slide up?
Oh, yeah, good idea. Let me share my screen again here.
Did we acknowledge that Ambring shared some community air grants links in the chat with us already for the folks who are interested?
Oh, thank you, Adri. No, that's great. Yes. Yeah, there's a link to the community air grant information page in the chat.
Would you like me to just stay what's on the slide, Laura, for everyone? So here's our contact information for the Office of Community Air Protection. Here's our web page and our email. We have communityair@arb.california.gov, or if you want to email us in Spanish, it's airecomunitario@arb.ca.gov. And for contacts, you can contact Laura Schmidt or myself, Adriana Hernandez. If you speak Spanish, or if you want to contact us in Spanish, or just phone us in Spanish, go ahead and feel free to call me. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Laura?
No, you did great. If you go to the next slide, what I just wanted to mention actually about, we know that there was another community meeting that was happening at the same time for our Sustainable and Equitable Communities program. And even though the meeting was held at the same time, they did record it. So I just want to let the folks know here that they can hear about that meeting that had gone on, and they're encouraged to share their comments on. This is also a planning effort where, you know, the staff would like to hear your comments on how to best approach these policies. So this is contact information for the general program contact, and also where that information on the program recording and presentation materials. Thank you.
So, Laura, did you want to go over these slides, or these are extra slides just in case to show everybody?
Yeah, that was just in case people asked about the strongly supported community list. So the communities that we're planning to move forward are all on this list. This is the list that we were directed by our CARB board in 2019 to prepare, because we recognize that communities were coming repeatedly to the board meeting and testifying, and you know, we could sense the frustration because, you know, they felt like they kept coming and people weren't hearing, and so we wanted to let them know that we, you know, recognize the community support and also the air district support for these communities. So this list can be dynamic, although it hasn't changed since we made it, except we've taken the communities that were selected off the list last year. But it's we recognize the effort that people have made in coming to us and recognizing the program constraints and not being able to pick all the communities. So, thank you.
Well, thanks, Laura. And so I noticed that we did drop the link, Terry did in the chat, to the Sustainable Communities Workshop. And again, I appreciate everyone being with us tonight. And I don't know if Dell or anybody has any closing comments, but if not, we can let everyone have a good night. And we will get the recording up as soon as we can to the webpage. So we do want to thank everyone for participating.
Yeah, thank you all. We really appreciate your time and your thoughts.